Good afternoon, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. You all rise and join us in the singing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. And join us in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Councillor Warren, I believe you have the adoption of the open session agenda.
I do. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Joyce, the agenda for the open session of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 be adopted as circulated and with the following amendments. Additions. Item 6.1, deputation by Jane Robinson regarding a telecommunications facility concurrence application, 950 Burries Green Road, Verlem. Item 6.2, deputation by Jeff McKay and Victoria McKay regarding a telecommunications facility concurrence application, 774 Little Britain Road, Mariposa. Item 6.3, deputation by Lisa Severinson and Paula Preston regarding an Eastern Ontario Regional Network Cell Gap project. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Joyce.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's passed. We have everyone here in the council chambers, with the exception of Councillor McDonald, who's zooming in today. And without further ado, we'll move on to notices and information by members of council. Any members of council with? Before we do that, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, should any arise during the course of the meeting, advise the chair, we'll deal with them accordingly. Back to notices by members of council. Deputy Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you. First of all, I'd like to give a shout out to the Mimi Swans who are taking flight and actually looking to expand their club, and they have a meeting this Thursday night at 5:30 at the Pontypool United Church. Also, Kawartha Lakes Art Council has a marketing and self-promotion workshop next Monday, 27th from 2 to 3 at the Janetville Community Center. And the Janetville Community Center is hosting a fundraiser on Saturday, March 4th at 8 p.m. featuring Punch Douglas. And this group is a local band that's friggin' awesome. And also just a heads up too is Janetville, Bethany, and Pontypool have their registrations now posted on their social media sites for all their youth softball for the summer season. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smeaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I had a nice coffee with Wes Found, Adam's brother, this morning to talk deeply about BIA. So just a shout out to the Lindsay BIA doing lots of really, really great things. It took me back to my McGill economics days. We talked critical mass theory and cumulative flow theory, and neither of them rang a bell, so that might explain a few marks. Shout out to the Ross Memorial. This is today's news, global news. Ross Memorial Hospital performs first hip surgery in Ontario using Insignia femoral stem implants. So once again, I think at this table we're always celebrating the Ross, but there it is again, this time provincial news. And I'd like to thank all the constituents of Ward 5, their comments about budget, their comments ahead of budget. Keep them coming, whether they're wonderful comments or whether they're comments of concern. The only way to hear is from them. So keep those coming before February 28th. Remember to check the Academy Theatre website. Lots of great things happening at the Academy. And I'd like to thank the Kawartha Police Service. I have my first ride out next week, so I'll be looking forward to that. Getting out and seeing what we already know, the excellent work they do, but seeing it firsthand. So I'm looking forward to that. So thanks to them.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the volunteers for the Pleasant Point radar run. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold it this year due to weather conditions, ice conditions, but we were expecting close to 2,000 people, and I'm sure next year it'll be a great event. And I just wanted to thank the organizers, especially the Dunsford Lions Club and Michael Jancic for putting this all together, and we'll be back at it again next year. I attended the Launch Kawartha opening with Community Futures and Economic Development last week, and it was very impressive that the amount of support that entrepreneurs have and businesses and individuals can get now in this facility, in this organization, Launch Kawartha. If you're ever upstairs in the building, just third floor of the Bank of Nova Scotia building there in Lindsay. It's certainly worth the time to go up there and have a look at what's offered for supports. And finally, in Rayboro, unfortunately, the post office has been closed as of today. However, Canada Post will be erecting 2 super mailboxes on Peace Road until a new postmaster is chosen. And I wanted to thank Kelly Steffroy. Kelly hosted her home for 2 years for the Rayboro Post Office. And if it wasn't for Kelly, I don't think we would have a post office in Rayboro, but she got a promotion with Canada Post and no longer able to have the post office. So the postmaster has been position has been advertised, and hopefully we'll get a new post office in Rayboro, but there are temporary mailboxes set up in Rayboro. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Impact 32, the Bob Cajun Chamber of Commerce, Settlers Village, the Bob Cajun Library, Globus Theatre, Glenn Walker from Maryborough Lodge, and others for a really enjoyable Frost Fest. And it was really heartening to see so many people working together to make a really good event, so well done. And Bob Cajun now has a level 3 electric vehicle charger on the Trent Severn land near the locks. This initiative by Environmental Action Bob Cajun will make Bob Cajun even more of a destination and help the environment at the same time. A special thank you to Anna Dare, a wonderful volunteer member of EAB who applied for the grant through RTO8, managed the project, and saw it through to fruition. So well done, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald, you had something?
Yes, I did. Yes. On Family Day, Logie Street Park was well attended with lots of people enjoying themselves. I think everybody enjoyed the Zamboni going around as much as they did the skating. Mr. Smeaton was also there showing off his skating skills with his family. So fun was definitely had by all. So special thanks for staff for maintaining this park for everyone to enjoy in Lindsay. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any notices or motions from staff? Seeing none. We'll move on to item 5, which is minutes of past council meetings. So I need a motion that the minutes of the January 26, 2023 special council meeting, the January 31st, 2023 special council meeting, the January 31st, 2023 regular council meeting, and the February 2nd, 2023 special council meetings be received and adopted. I have a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor McDonald. Any comments or questions? Councillor Yeo.
I was absent at one of those meetings, but it's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is deputations. Item 6.1, telecommunications facility concurrence application, 950 Berries Green Road, Verlem. Jane Robinson.
Hi there. I'm just here on behalf of Land Squared representing Rogers Communications for this application. I don't need the whole 5 minutes, but I just, sorry, I will start my video. But just wanted to be available if there should be any questions.
Thank you. Let's see if there are any questions for you. Are there any questions for the deputant on the tower? Councillor Warren.
Yeah, some of the towers that are being put forward today, they'll have many different communications businesses putting up their parts onto the tower. I mean, this is a health question. The more that you have on a tower, does that increase the electromagnetic radiation or force? ERF. Yeah. ERF?
I'm not sure if the deputant's the right person to ask,
I thought that
but
was, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
but you can feel free to weigh in. It's your
it's
your time and your deputation.
I'm assuming I'm the deputant?
You are.
Okay.
So I guess that would be a question. I'm sorry, maybe I was thinking that you were part of the development, but what were your concerns? Your concerns were they the loggerhead shrike, or there was some issues?
I'm not the person giving the concerns. I'm representing the application for the cell phone tower. All of these towers have to, and all of their equipment have to meet ISED protocol and safety code regulations. So I'm not the expert in those matters, but I know that all of these things have pass regulation, and we have pass regulation on those.
I didn't really hear her properly. I guess that's fine. I was just thinking the more that you had on a tower, the more issues would be with the electromagnetic or what was it, Dan?
The RF, radio frequencies.
Radio frequencies. But anyway, thank you. That's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the deputant? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for your deputation. And we'll move on from there.
Welcome.
I'm going to ask the CAO to speak to these towers because I think that there may be, some councillors may not be up to speed on this whole project. So before we go on to the other two deputants, who I believe are speaking in favor of these towers, I'll get the CAO to talk about EORN and the project to get Ontario, especially Eastern Ontario, to 95% coverage for cell and broadband.
Doug, can we receive the deputation?
Yep. So I need a motion to receive the last deputation. Councillor Warren, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? And that's passed. CAO?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So there are 3 items on your agenda today, 3 separate projects. They're for cellular towers to expand on cellular service in certain areas of the city. The partnership that is moving forward this project throughout Eastern Ontario is the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. You're going to hear from them as the 3rd deputation speaking in favor of all 3 items. The first 2 deputations are specific to the locations, and they're both representing, I believe, the proponent and or landowner that's hosting the tower on their property specifically. In terms of the EORN project, Mayor actually described it in a very good soundbite. This is an ongoing partnership that Eastern Ontario municipalities, the province and federal government have had together. We fund a portion of it as a member, as do others. It was originally to improve broadband throughout Eastern Ontario, and that project is actually substantially completed. Overlapped with that was new monies for cellular service improvements and some broadband expansion as well. And these are what these projects are representing. And so there was a target for 95% cellular service through Eastern Ontario. And as you can appreciate, as we move northward in the east, it gets very remote, gets very complicated in terms of providing that service. And so this is almost like the last mile where that service is being upped. The process generally is federally regulated, and you're probably aware of that. There's a council policy to that effect. And so we process these applications through that federally prescribed program, and we have a component to it for consultation locally. So what you're seeing today are the results of consultation. Your policy delegates authority to staff to make certain approvals if they meet all of prescribed requirements. In this case, some are coming forward to you because there's either some questions that the public posed on the process or it didn't meet a particular requirement that's in the current council policy. And so you're seeing 3 recommendations. I believe 2 are in support. 1 is neutral and bringing forward sort of options for you to support the applications.
You had a question, Councillor Warren?
Yeah, so some of them had issues with there was one, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one, that had issues over health, and that's why I'm asking the question. I think it's great to have this coverage, but the question being, the more you have on one tower, is that an issue? That's all. And the other question I had was, there are 2 in my ward, I believe, and they're fairly close together. So I was just wondering why they had to be, so close together. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to the CAO. Last year and the year before, I guess it was, we had, in the previous council, had a few applications come forward. One of them was on Gilmar, just sort of more what I was familiar with, Gilmar Road. But not just that one, but the way they have it, like you said, you're correct, it's a federally regulated industry. So it limits our input, it limits the public's input into comments for these projects. And the only way that you could comment at the time was a company out of Newmarket, Skepter, I think it was, or Spectre, sorry about the name, but, and they engage, they're engaged by the cell company, whether it be Rogers or Bell, for example. So is that the only way that we can, as a public, can contribute comments to these projects, just by looking for an ad in the paper? That's basically the only way that they can find out that there's actually, other than council here, but there is a period of time where they can comment. And just wondering, because it circumvenes our local planning authority. It's like an airport. It's federally regulated, and you can't really do much about it locally, unfortunately.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So you are correct. It is very much federally regulated and prescribed in terms of the process. Part of the process for proponents, though, is to provide notice and consultation, and you will see their consultation reports accompanying these respective applications. And they're required to do that for all of them. What I can't suggest is when those reports go federally, it's up to the federal regulator to determine sort of the merits, if you will, of those public comments coming in. So it is very much a federally prescribed process. I'll maybe just to back up to the other questions, you should ask EORN in their deputation about the location distances, because I think there's sort of varying response to that. In terms of health regulation, I can't speculate on sort of the extent of the impact, but I do know that the federal regulation, as well as our council policy, encourages co-location of these various sort of telecommunications on towers. And I know that that is tested at least federally, so indirectly there's health regulation behind that co-locating requirement. But it's actually encouraged for all proponents, whether it's broadband or cellular technology.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.2, which is telecommunication facility concurrence application 774 Little Britain Road, and we have Jeff and Victoria McKay. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. So as you stated, this is for 774 Little Britain Road, and it's relating to item 11.1.12 later on the agenda. So this is a proposed 91.5 meter guide telecommunications tower. In order for a site to work, we need a list of items, including we need a willing landlord. We need someone to say, yes, we're okay with you putting a tower on our property. We need to be able to achieve a transmission and radio frequency qualification. And those come from siting at an exact spot. And we're given kind of these areas to look for a tower when we're looking. We need a tower to be placed where there are already residents, because that's what we're looking to cover. We need to utilize visual mitigation strategies, and we need to abide by policies and requirements. So for this proposed tower, in this case, we meet all of the requirements, except for one design requirement, which is a suggestion, and it's to be set back 3 times tower height from a residential property. Now, based off some kind of questions and feedback I've heard, is that for 5G, that's the most up-to-date service, that generally reaches about 500 to 800 meters. So that's why you see a lot more towers going up nowadays than you ever did previously, because previous services, 4G, for example, stretches about 2 kilometers. And then lower down, they stretch further. So that's why currently more towers are going up, and they're trying to infill the spaces. So the first thing we do is we look to see if there's a tower we could possibly co-locate on. We can stick our antennas on without building a new tower. And we also look for buildings that would be tall enough without building a tower. In this case, neither of those were possible. So we did determine that it needed to be a standalone tower. So if you can see on our deputation request, the appendix, page 6, we did do a thorough candidate selection, and that just explains, here's a bunch of different candidates we looked at, and this is why the candidate we have selected is the absolute best candidate that exists. And then further, if you go on to slide 10, it explains why if we were to move this tower to abide by the one request of being within 3 times tower height, then that would be offside with other requirements, specifically the Economic Development Division noting that they encourage to remove as little agricultural land as possible. That would be offside because we would have to be right in the middle of the field, and we would be removing a lot more agricultural land because our tower guys would be in there, and then our access would also be in there. So we're just really hoping that, we really want the residents to be able to get the service that they deserve in this area, and we really don't want them to suffer. So even though there are a couple residents within that 3 times tower height, we did send them notices through the mail directly to their place, as well as posted it in the newspaper, and they did not email or voice in any concerns, the closest residents. So we just really want you to be aware of what's coming and hope that you take this into consideration. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Thank you. Just hang in there and we'll see questions and comments. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. My concerns are the public consultation process and accuracy of reporting. I'm all for more cell phone towers, more coverage in rural areas. Absolutely, it's needed. However, on page 87 of our committee report, it says that your notice was placed in the Haliburton County Echo. Folks, we're in Kawartha Lakes. It's not local. Haliburton Echo will not reach our local residents. Further to that, sorry, send this over here. You had one concern from a constituent, and you replied to them in quite excellent detail, except for one thing. In the response to this constituent's concern, the proposed site complies to these guidelines. You went further, follows all setback requirements in accordance with Kawartha Lakes Policy Section 2.02. And that's repeated in bold at the end. Complies in every respect with the design and setback criteria established by the governing protocol and local policy. And yet I have a report from staff that says, so I'm confused. It does not comply with recommended setbacks for residential uses as suggested in the council policy. And it repeats, it does not satisfy locational guidelines of the city's telecommunications policy as it relates to setbacks from residential areas. So who's right? Director Holly, can you?
So I can comment on that slightly if you'd like. So just first, part of the Kawartha Lakes protocol says that for newspapers, it needs to be posted in Haliburton County Echo. So that's why in this case, that's where that was posted. Also, part of our pre-consultation report said it needed to be posted in Haliburton County Echo. So that was our responsibility and that was done. Further to that, our pre-consultation report did note that it complied with every setback requirement, and we explained why we couldn't be 3 times from tower height. Now, this isn't a requirement, it is a suggestion, and it's in every case possible we look to be 3 times from tower height, but we do satisfy all of the zoning requirements and all of the other requirements. Just it's requested that we, in all possible attempts, to be 3 times tower height. Now, we're not able to be, and we justified in this case why.
Okay, but with respect, in your letter back to this constituent, he says complies in every respect with the design and setback criteria established by local policy. That is not accurate. So and does anybody here receive the Haliburton Echo in this room? We're not in Haliburton, folks. So you haven't, public consultation, I am going to recommend that you recircle back to that and redo the, oh, another question. When you do mail to local the residents within the tower sphere, is the mail to dear occupant, or do you put their full name, first and last name in that mail?
So it's based off what we're received from the planning department on how we mail it. Because of MPAC, there are some guidelines on what can be shared and what can't be. But across the envelope bottom, there is a notice that explains that this is just to make sure it doesn't get sent to junk, that this is for a telecom tower in your area and is important information. And it's also mailed to all property owners within 120 meters from property boundaries, as well as 3 times tower height from the property, to make sure that all individuals nearby are notified. And that's part of the Kawartha Lakes protocol.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask the question again. Does it say dear occupant, or is the first and last name on the envelope when you're addressing?
It's an address, because that's what we're given from the planning department.
Okay, well, I truly believe that the public consultation process has not been followed properly, and I'm just going to be recommending that that be restarted again. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
Moving, can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Perry, Councillor Smeaton, all in favor? And that's passed. Moving on to item 6.3, which is Eastern Ontario Regional Network Cell Gap Project. Lisa Severson and Paula Preston. Good afternoon, ladies, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting or speaking as a deputation to council today. I'd like to introduce my colleagues on this call, Lisa Severson, who's the Director of Communications, and Jason St. Pierre, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Eastern Ontario Regional Network. I'm Paula Preston, and I'm the Director of Technology for ERN. As part of this presentation, there are a couple of slides in your package, so that contain a bit more detail. Please take a look at those at some point during the presentation. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what the ERN Cell Gap project is all about, and talk a little bit about the 3 sites that are under discussion, but mostly about what the project is all about and why these 3 sites are so important to us to move forward. ERN Cell Gap project is in partnership with Rogers as our telecommunications partner. It's a $300 million project funded by the province and Ontario, as well as our communications partner. And in fact, also the city has contributed nearly $750,000 to the project to help support overall costs. Our objective, as described so well by your CAO, is that we're trying to provide coverage, 99% voice coverage, 95% and 85% of other service levels across the Eastern Ontario region, where people are living and working and where the major roads are across the region. Our focus is to fill in the gaps, which are primarily in the rural areas. So that's what our focus is in that context. Overall for the project, we're planning to build 260 new towers across the region. We're also co-locating on approximately 74 new sites as well. These are existing sites that Rogers is putting new equipment on. They're generally speaking co-locations or other third-party towers. So we are trying to use existing infrastructure where we can as much as possible. Overall, this project is to be completed by 2025. So we have a fairly tight timeline to get it done. So there's a lot of work to happen. For the city of Kawartha Lakes yourselves, is that you've got you've got 18 new builds that are being proposed across the entire city, and you'll have 6 co-locations. Of the co-locations, 2 are completely done right now, but unfortunately, we've only got, we have no sites in service, and we don't have the municipal approvals for and the associated development agreements for any of these sites yet. Within the city, it's taking anywhere from 6 months to a year to get approval for sites based on your practices. But the bigger challenge is also once these sites get built or once the municipal approval is there for these sites, it can take up to 18 months to actually build a site. So it's a long process to get sites in service to provide service for your residents. And the other key point that I wanted to make is that the site selection process, what's involved for picking a new site or picking a site in general, is probably costs at least $20K per site. So it's a challenge to if a site doesn't get approved through the municipal approval process, it is a challenge to find a new site. It's a challenge to find a willing landlord, as well as a site that meets our engineering requirements. What we're seeing right now is that the city is starting to make progress on the municipal approval process, which is why 3 sites are coming forward to council today. Of the 3 sites that are coming forward, I think that 2 of them are recommended for approval, and then the final site, which is the Little Britain Road one, is been asked to be received due to the concerns about the setback from residential properties. I do, listening to the excellent presentation from Victoria earlier, is that it is it's a residential setback is a guideline in your protocol. It's not a requirement. And there are probably with this site no other options to move the site. Any move will move it into the agricultural land associated with that site's partially in now, but it'll move it further into the agricultural land, which is a problem with the landowner as well as your tower siting protocol as you're trying to protect your key assets within the city. So from our perspective is that we hope that you can accept this site on Little Britain Road, because if it doesn't get accepted, we'll probably have to move the site more than 10 kilometers from where it's currently located, which will leave a gap in your coverage. So I hope that you can accept the site. And that's basically all that I was going to say. I don't know if Lisa or Jason want to add anything more, but through to you, Mayor, if there's any questions, be more than willing to answer them.
Thank you. I'll see if either of the other 2 wish to say anything. Go ahead.
If I may through you, Your Honor, I would like to thank the City of Kawartha Lakes. They've been working, staff has been working very closely with Paula and her tech team on trying to move sites forward. So I just wanted to thank staff for their hard work and their willingness to work with us on this project.
Thank you. Jason, did you have anything?
No, thank you. It's been covered off well. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Richardson, you had a question?
I do, thank you, through you. Just curious, so you have the 6 months and the 18 months, so it's approximately 2 years before we get going on these projects. What kind of timelines are you looking at with other municipalities?
If there is no concern raised by the general public as part of the consultation process, they can take 3 to 4 months at the best. But what I will add is that what we are seeing recently is a lot faster process or progress within the city. So, so stuff is starting to move, which is great to see, but it's still a long ways. We still have a ways to go.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just to clarify, I do, I went through all the documents. I understand why you've picked that site. I guess my question is, do you respect the public consultation process?
The public consultation process and the process that's set up by the city is a policy that we follow to the best of our ability, because ultimately it's council that will make a final decision on whether the site is going to be located.
Sorry, my question was, do you respect the process? Do you respect it?
I'm not sure what you mean by respect the process. We follow the process.
But through you, Mr. Chair, I think, again, we respect council's decision. We respect the policies that you have in place. We try to work with Rogers. They are responsible for the tower siting and for the consultation process. And we try to ensure that process runs as smoothly as possible. If there are problems, there have been other municipalities that we are working with now. If there are issues or challenges that the municipality brings forward to EURN, we then will go back and work with Rogers to ensure that the consultations are done in a respectful manner around your policies.
Okay, thank you. So, and just getting to, in the public consultation process, the process is to post an ad in the local newspaper, and that hasn't happened. So it's really difficult to approve something when the process has not been followed. That's why I asked, do you respect the process? Do you respect public consult? It's there for a reason. So
my understanding, as described through the real estate person, is that, and I do confess that I have not read the latest version of the process, but my understanding is that the city provide as part of the consultation process a list of newspapers where notification is supposed to be done, and I believe that the Rogers representative did follow that process. Although Halliburton Echo seems a bit odd, but that was the list of the sites that was included.
So someone made an error somewhere, so we have to correct the error. That's all I'm saying. The other thing, though, just to reiterate, when you respond to a constituent, it has to be accurate reporting. And you've made it sound like it meets all of our setback criteria. I know they're guidelines, but don't say things that aren't true when you respond to my constituents, please. That's not good reporting. The other thing is, in the submission, I didn't point this out, but you have two photos, and one says, actually I should have been responding to this with the McKays. If I get this here, I think it's on this one. No. This is by, us councillors here, we don't agree on everything, but we do agree on accurate reporting and accurate documents. But there's two pictures. One shows, it says east and west when it's really north and south of the proposed tower, and it's actually the same picture. It doesn't show the two different angles. So that's also wrong. So it's kind of, the whole thing is rife with errors and omissions and mistakes, so we need to clean this up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you to the speakers. The main thrust of this whole exercise is to get rid of these cell gaps. Would this tower in Little Britain help out the situation? I know that there's a cell gap between Oakwood and Woodville. That's where it's really needed as well, but will this help with that at all? Or what is the current, I'm looking at the map here, I don't have a grasp on what the total kilometers in a radius would be, or miles, that this cell tower would help things out, help reception out.
If I may respond to that, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact locations that you're talking about, but generally, depending upon how flat the terrain is, the reach of a cell tower is on average between 9 and 12 kilometers. So that's the sort of range. But remember, there are 18 sites that are being proposed throughout the 18 new builds plus uplifts plus the co-locations throughout the region that will help to provide to ensure that we meet that coverage objective of 99% of the demand area.
Okay, thank you. My last question, Mr. Mayor, is through you to the CAO. Back at the previous council, I believe it was April of 2019, there was an announcement at the Little Britain Community Centre, and it was Bell Canada. I know we're dealing with Rogers here, but we're dealing with EORN here. And it was a tremendous amount of money that was to be proposed to be built and fill in these cell gaps. So is it not just, I know we're dealing with Rogers here now, but where does, sometimes people are baffled as to where all this money goes. I know it's going for a good use, but I think there's a lot of questions like which company gets it, which one's prioritized, and I don't expect you to know the answer, but it's really confusing, like to where all this money goes. I know at the end of the day we want to get better reception, and there's no question about that, but maybe in a short synopsis, I don't know if you could answer that one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll do my best. I probably won't do it justice. What I can say generally is over the past several years, a few years for sure, there's been a number of provincial programs for localized as well as broad-based or large-scale broadband and cellular improvements. And those are bid on by not just what you mentioned, Rogers and Bell in certain space, but there are other internet providers, for example. And so you're seeing at the local level, I think, various announcements and funding that's been coming through the provincial government. This is a much broader regional initiative. As it was described, all three levels of government are contributors to it. It's Eastern Ontario sort of in scale, and it is to do just what you had described, sort of filling the cellular gap. But I did mention before, EORN similarly did and led a broadband improvement project, similar structure, in previous years as well. So I can appreciate that it is quite confusing because there are a number of providers, but as well as partnerships within these separate and distinct projects. If I could, Mr. Mayor, just there was one clarification, and I think while we have the deputants might be important. The previous deputant and the submission that they made noted that notice was given in the Halliburton paper. The item that we're talking about and the property in Little Britain, in the description of the consultation itself, it was an ad in Kawartha Lakes this week. So I would suggest it was an error in the deputant's sort of update or submission, but the report, and I know we get circulated that same when these projects are in the newspaper, quite confident that it was actually in the Kawartha Lakes this week for this particular project, not the Halliburton Echo. If it was there too, so be it. But I can tell you comfortably that it was in Kawartha Lakes this week, as described in the report attachments.
Anything else from council? I have a motion to receive the deputation. Councillor Warren, Deputy Mayor Richardson, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 7 is correspondence, and we have none. Item 8 is presentations. We have none. And I'll move to committee of the whole. And a motion that the minutes of the February 7th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting be received and the recommendations included in section 9.3 of the agenda be adopted. I have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Smeaton, Councillor Perry. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's passed. Item 10 is the Planning Advisory Committee, And I need a motion that the minutes of the February 8th, 2023 Planning Advisory Committee meeting be received and recommendations included in section 10.3 of the agenda be adopted. Councillor Warren, seconder. Councillor Yeo, questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's passed. Item 11. Councillor Smeaton, I believe you have the motion for that, and we have extractions. Councillor Warren has 11.11, Councillor Smeaton 11.12, Councillor Yeo 11.14, Councillor Warren 11.15, and Councillor Ashmore 11.18. And Councillor Smeaton, 11.112.
Can we read this?
Yep.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, move that the consent matters moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Richardson, that all of the proposed resolutions shown in section 11.1 of the agenda be approved and adopted by council in the order that they appear on the agenda and sequentially numbered, save and except for items, which I think we just went through, the extractions, so. All of them?
Yeah.
Please. 11.1.1. 11.1.2. I actually here too. 11.1.14. 11.1.5. 11.1.8. And that's it. And that will probably be the last time you ask me to do consent. 11.1.2. 11.1.12. What am I? Thank you. Apologies, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? And that's passed. So, Councillor Warren, you have 11.11.
So actually, I extracted the whole lot of them. It was 11.112 to that, but anyway, you put down two separate ones. It was just a general question of to staff, and I did send a question before, but I didn't get an answer, so that's okay. These coming forward, there are things like, in one of them specifically, I can't remember exactly which one of them out of the lot, had a wetland on it. So that would have been something that you probably wouldn't have put up for sale anyway. So my question is, does staff look at these before they're even put on a list to actually put them as surplus? It seems like that would be the way to go instead of after the fact. Like you would see the wetland and you go, oh, well, obviously it's mostly wetland, we're not going to put that up for sale. So that's my question to staff, and it's just a general question for all of those.
Well, I think before I get Sherry to weigh in, I will say that there was a task force that was set up, and the task force went through and it identified properties based on a map, looking at how many roads and road allowances and properties were owned by the city in a particular area. And where we had a bunch, we picked ones that we thought were good candidates to be declared surplus. And that's how they got on the list. But I'll let Sherry weigh in. She probably has more and better information than I do.
So through you to the counselor, I have the exact same information, and that's what I was going to say, is that there was a time when the properties would be identified before they were researched, so we wouldn't necessarily know things about them that would make them unsuitable for sale. So these were put up as surplus before they were evaluated, and now we've realized that all of these properties are unsuitable for sale. But I can advise that we follow a different process now, and we would do the research first.
Would you like to move the motion?
Absolutely, I can move the other one to, anyway, the 1.15, I think it is.
Well, I think we'll go through them.
Okay, so yes, I'll move that.
Seconder? Deputy Mayor Richardson. All in favor? And that's passed. Councillor Smeaton, you have 11.12.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a quick question for Mrs. Dyer. It was just in the, so this was the hydro easement was the issue. And what I noticed was that there's one resident already who said they're not interested in buying the 50%. And that was offered at one point that they, correct, that they would be, it was offered and they said they had no interest in their 50% of buy-in. And I was just wondering, it said it's, council could decide to keep the property surplus and direct staff to continue preparing the property for sale in the open market. Not recommended given that the property is unable to be developed due to the location of hydro infrastructure. So is that, I just want to make sure the wording is right. It's actually unable to be developed, or is it an opinion that people probably wouldn't come and develop it? I just didn't really see the point of hanging on to this if it could be sold. So that was my question. It's actually unable to be developed?
Through Mr. Mayor to you, true, it is unable to be developed, so we are not recommending the sale.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to move the motion?
Please.
Seconder? Councillor Ashmore? All in favor? And that's passed. 11.14 is Councillor Yo.
Thank you, and through you, yeah, I have no problem with all the other ones being declared not surplus for various reasons. This one, however, is a prime piece of real estate, and because they found a holding symbol on 1 foot strip, they want to declare it not surplus. But I think we should continue to declare it surplus and actually do the work to find out if we can vest it to the city between now and whenever, but not go through the whole not surplus and then making it surplus again routine, because I believe, truly believe, that if this can be vested, that 1 foot can be vested, that this property is acreage, which is what people are looking for these days, and it's probably worth in excess of $250,000 at some point in the future, if that 1 foot can be vested. So I'd rather just have no motion, and or the motion be that staff pursue vesting that 1 foot holding.
Let me get Ms. Dyer to weigh in on this, and maybe Director Holly would have something to say. So I'll start with Ms. Dyer.
So through you to the councillor, it is our recommendation that the surplus declaration be rescinded. We had already looked into the 1 foot reserve, but I will refer to Director Holly to comment further on that.
Director?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I'll have to take a look at this in more detail. I'm not sure why the 1 foot reserve is there, but I'll have to take a quick look at the report.
So what would you like to do, Councillor Yo?
Oh, I'd like to, because the report clearly, when I read it, says that there might be an opportunity to invest it in the future. And so, like Richard to go back and have a look at it and at the
Could I speak to it further before we go forward? I'm sorry. The other issue is that we have an 18-month requirement between advertising and sale, and this has exceeded it. So we think that it should still be the surplus declaration rescinded, and then we can at that point look into it further, but we would have to re-advertise regardless. So we should rescind the declaration of surplus that's there, look into it further, and then go forward.
Are you okay with that?
Oh, I guess.
It'll come back to us.
Flip, flop, fly, let's go. Okay, whatever works.
Okay, so you want to move it as printed, and then it'll come. Can I get a mover and seconder? Nobody want to? Councillor Joyce, move it. Seconder? So the time frame's going to elapse on the advertising. So if we were to do anything, we're going to have to bring it back anyway. So it seems to me that moving the motion as printed, and then Director Hawley will look at the vesting of the 1 foot, and it'll come back to us, and it'll get re-advertised and hopefully resold. So seconder is Councillor Warren. Anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Yo.
Thank you, and this, and maybe when we look into the vesting on this, we can come back with a reason. This was declared surplus 8 years ago by a task force made up of councillors with the property manager, or the person who looks after property at that time. And now it came back 8 years later, it comes back, and all of a sudden there's a big panic, and I'm hearing stuff about a couple of months or 80 days or whatever it is. So I'd like a breakdown of why that is. I don't want to hear an answer right now, because my mind is way too confused about it. So I'd like a report back on why the panic now when it took 8 years to get here. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as printed, all in favor? And that passes. What?
Did you check with Charlie? Did you look up?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
But I voted in favor. Moving on, 1115, Councillor Warren, you had that. Are you moving it? Pardon?
Yes, I'll move that.
Seconder? Councillor Perry, all in favor? And that passes. 1118, primary data sharing, Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if Sarah's here. Oh, there she is. She's available. Thanks. A question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chief Paramedic Services, Sarah Johnston. And my question is, this is really important to me anyways, and I know to a lot of people. We have a lot of hospitals that serve City Kawartha Lakes, whether it's Ross Memorial Hospital, Peterborough Regional Hospital, Soldiers Hospital, Port Perry, Minden, Halliburton, Newmarket, Oshawa, just to name a few, even into Toronto. We're going to be consolidating data. Are we with everybody's health data? How are we going to work this out with so many different, maybe if you can sort of walk me through this, how we're going to be modernizing the ambulance dispatch center. So is that what the whole goal of this is? To consolidate all the information between all these providers, all these ambulance services?
So thanks for the question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. This just involves sharing data or information between the paramedics report, so the ambulance call report, and our dispatch system. So this is a modernization step so that when paramedics enter information in their ambulance call report or the patient chart that they're responsible for, it's shared with the dispatch center and vice versa. So typically, once a call is completed, the paramedic would call the dispatch center and that information would be shared over the phone. Dispatch center would give the patient's address, for example, and the times of the call, and the paramedic in turn would give the patient name, and that would reconcile the report, and then it would be closed. So what this data sharing agreement speaks to is only that information, or that bidirectional and automated information flow between the paramedic's call report and the dispatch center. There's lots of different ways that the province and the dispatch center is looking to modernize. But at this point of time, this speaks very much in isolation just to that bidirectional feed of information between the paramedics form and the dispatch computer-aided dispatch system.
Okay. So we would say, for example, Kawartha Lakes ambulance service, we would be sharing, I'll use Durham Region as an example because they're our neighbors to the west. We would be able to share and help a patient who comes in, and they would have their information readily available to speed up the process to admit that person. Or I know it's a complicated question, but you know, are we dealing with OHIP? OHIP has everybody's information when you, I don't know if they do or not, but it's confusing with eHealth and OHIP and all this, but and the system that we have. But I guess what I'm asking is this really going to, will it really help us? And are all the, not just Durham Region, but Halliburton, they come here a lot. Are we working in partnership now with every ambulance service that we're going to be able to share information and patients are going to be able to get care maybe quicker from this update? Modernization?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ashmore, no, that's not the case right now. While that will be the ultimate long-term goal, this will be of no benefit to patients at this point. It's an efficiency improvement between the dispatch system and the paramedic system for sharing patient data rather than doing that manually. For example, in our community paramedic program, it has that similar capacity that you're speaking to, where paramedics can go into Connecting Ontario and see, the patient history and information so that they have a better idea of what's going on. That is not a current capability of our electronic systems. And like I said, that's a great long-term improvement, but this report doesn't speak to that specifically.
Finally, so that would this improve, not that we don't have good response times, but would this improve response times? Say, for example, if our ambulance is out on Durham Road 13 and they're closer to Davis Drive, they're closer to Newmarket as opposed to being closer to Oshawa or Lindsay or Port Perry. Like, how does that work? Does it also help response times?
And again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ashmore, no, what it will improve is the time required for paramedics to clear a call. So at the end of the call, when reports are getting done, paperwork's getting completed, it will free up the paramedics for 5 minutes or whatever time they were going to spend on the phone clearing that call to potentially be available for the next call. But it has nothing to do with who's the closest ambulance, or any of those functions with the dispatch center. So great long-term improvements that, hopefully we can bring to you in the future. But right now, this is that data sharing agreement specifically for that one piece of information sharing.
Thank you.
You have a motion?
As printed.
I have a seconder. Councillor Smeaton. All in favor? And that's passed. Last extraction is 11-112. Councillor Smeaton.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think a lot of conversations happened about this. So my extraction, I had a good conversation with Director Hawley this morning, and it just appeared to me that there were some questions about this tower that were different from the other two towers when I was reading through it. And so he and I had a good chat about just me making sure that it seemed to me the planning department and the economic development department were not comfortable with this, with certain criteria in this. And I just he gave me a great explanation. So I kept it extracted simply for the sake of that same conversation happening here, as it really helped me. And we just thought it might just be helpful, period, before we make the motion so that we know exactly what the motion is, if that's okay. So to Director Hawley, just maybe clarification like you gave me today, and that'd be great.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, through the mayor, to the councillor. Certainly, yes. Obviously, our policy, we have a telecommunications policy, and that has siting criteria. Those are provided when everyone comes through the pre-consultation process. In this case, we had suggested that they go further out so that they could meet our policies for setbacks from the towers to a residential use. We define residential use as a house on an abutting property, as opposed to a property that's zoned for residential use. And the difference is you could have an agricultural piece of property that has a residential use on it, which is different from a property that could be zoned simply for residential use. So we don't distinguish between zoning in this case. We just speak to the use. In this case, this didn't meet our setback policies. So hence we are bringing the report forward for council's review and decision. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a receive only. Councillor Joyce, you have a question?
Not a question, just more of commentary. I'm really conflicted on this because on one hand, I really want more cell phone towers in our rural areas. My concern is the constituent is right next door to this tower. Are they aware of what's going on? Yes, they were direct mailed, but it's basically dear occupant. And thank you for CO Taylor for confirming it was printed in Kawartha this week. That's important, obviously vital, local newspaper. I did see that in our internal reports, but it was conflicting, so I needed to clarify. I was going to wait for this meeting to clarify that. And thank you, Mr. Hawley. I wanted to call you this morning, but my phone was lighting up because they're cutting trees down in Kings Bay, so didn't have the chance. So I just very conflicted. That's all I want to say right now. I'm not going to make a motion just yet. Does anybody else have other comments?
Well, I think the motion is just to receive. You're not approving it. You're not moving it forward. It is strictly to be received.
That sounds good.
Can I clarify?
CAO?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the report says to receive for information, but in the report itself, it provides you essentially with two paths. Either you can support it or you can deny it, and there's language to that effect. So staff aren't recommending that it solely be received. It's being brought forward because you need to determine if the intent of your policy is still being met based on the request. But the request that's coming forward to you is to support, from the proponents, to support or concur with this project so that they can move forward. So you do need to make a determination, in my opinion, beyond just receiving it, if you support it or not.
So, Councillor Smeaton, what would you like to do?
Well, I was just going to note through you, Mr. Mayor, the other alternatives that considered that CAO is referring to are that other path that you're referring to. I want to make sure I'm clear. That's basically what we're saying here, is that we either receive this package, all three towers is going forward, or in the case of just Little Britain, there is another alternative to consider, which is we could support the application on the basis that the tower helps provide and then there's conditions. I just want to make sure that that's clear, that I'm right. Those are the two things to deliberate at this point. Does that sound correct? That's what I thought in the beginning. That's what I was asking Director Hawley for.
And you're, okay. Councillor Joyce for a second time.
Well, I hope I do this right. I'm going to make a motion. We do not receive with conditions, or just we don't receive? No.
I would say that you want to receive the report, and then you have to pick one of the alternatives. You either want to support it or you don't want to support it.
I don't want to support it.
So who's making the motion?
So I'm going to make the motion then that we receive the report, and that we take staff recommendation right now and do not, similar to Mr. Joyce, that we don't receive the tower.
So you want to receive the report and refer it back to staff?
Yeah.
That's your motion?
I just feel from all the questioning earlier, Mr. Mayor, that there seems to be at this table a real need for more further consultation. But CAO, if you have some thoughts on this, I'm more than happy to hear them. It's become quite convoluted, I think, and I want to make sure it's clear.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and I apologize if it's sort of coming forward confusing. So because this doesn't meet certain criteria in your policy, staff had brought forward a neutral report, essentially. It's saying, receive it, here's all the information. In the body of the report, there's sort of two paths. So if council opts to support it, there's suggested language that you would, it's outlined on page 270 of the amended agenda. So it basically says that this facility would be supported by council, conditional upon the applicant entering into a telecom development agreement. That's a standard condition that we impose, and you impose actually through your policy, so you would want to be consistent in this manner. And then it also says that we inform the federal government of that, and that we execute any documents to implement that approval or concurrence. The second stream is You're receiving the information generally. You don't support or you do not concur with this application. So you would be saying that this project is not supported and that the federal government be advised accordingly. We don't manage or control the public consultation process. So referring it back doesn't have the maybe effect that you would want. What I would suggest is the public consultation prescribed has been followed for this and the other two projects. And other than the fact that it's set back closer than what the policy suggests, at least in my own opinion, and we would suggest that it be supported for all of the other reasons that you would support a project of this nature. But if you're not satisfied that it doesn't meet some of the intent of your policy, then you should deny the request.
Councillor Richardson, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you. I'm leaning towards approving this just for the fact that it says no concerns raised by adjacent property owners. And this is a three-pronged cell tower. And, you know, being on council the last term, when we went into a pandemic, my email was lighting up regarding cell gaps and broadband services. And I know we had to, you know, go to the Eastern Ontario Warden Caucus, you know, to say this is a priority for us. So they're coming back with a prescribed way of doing business through the federal lens. And to me, I think we need to move forward with this when it's saying no concerns raised by adjacent property owners.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree, the Deputy Mayor. And it coincides with all of our official plan and everything in the report, except a council policy that has nothing to do with the Planning Act. It's just a council policy that, yeah, it's a little too close to that house. So we need to fill these gaps in, and it's a small sacrifice to make for filling in the gap. And I would speak against the motion. I think the current motion is to not approve it. I would speak against that motion, and thank you.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question. I think the councillor is worried that the neighbors have not received the notification. So is there some sort of middle ground here that we can approve it and make sure that they have been made aware of the cell tower going in, just in case that it just didn't happen for some reason?
Unfortunately, it is not our role to do that. It's the federal government and controlled by the federal government. So the proponents and EORN have followed the process exactly as the process is laid out in terms of advising. So I don't believe there is a role for us in doing that. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a note too in support of this project. I think in line with what the CAO had mentioned, it's a cumulative approach, right, to what how many check marks and how many X's with regard to the criteria, which is a policy, not a rule or a regulation. I campaigned on this issue. I'm sure many of us did around the table on increased cell. We're talking a lot about development and about growth and supporting the infrastructure. I do want to definitely hear from the local ward councillor, though, with respect in terms of his summation on this.
He's already spoken twice on it. So back to you, Councillor Smeaton. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to rescind my original motion, and I'll make a motion that we receive as printed and support the application. And thanks for all the clarification. I was a little confused, and now I see it. Thanks to Director Hawley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Yeo. We've kind of beaten it up. So, all in favor? And that's passed.
Sorry about that.
Moving on, Councillor Smeaton, can you turn off your, thank you. Moving to item 12, which is petitions.
The memo extracted, 1121. 1121?
I'm sorry. We have 1121, which is a memorandum from myself regarding a notice of proposed amendment to the minister's zoning order. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Warren, Councillor Smeaton. Would you like to speak to it?
I do. So I want to thank the mayor for bringing this forward. I am moving this resolution because it is the right thing to do. We don't have the capacity on many levels to see this type of growth until we have a clear path forward. We need to have a report from the consultants and the Growth Management Committee, so we will have a plan forward for growth. So for the public, I will hit on the salient points in the mayor's memorandum. So the direction of growth and settlement area expansion is being prescribed by landowners rather than through a council-led process. The city's options to weigh such factors as intensification versus the amount and location of settlement area expansions is being determined by the province. The province has not adjusted their own forecasted growth rates for Kawartha Lakes to justify this excess of housing supply. The city is overcommitting to development supply, and in doing so are committing to all supporting public infrastructure to accommodate knowing demand forecasts are much lower. The growth management exercises must now rationalize these expansions without any cost-benefit analysis. Cost recovery opportunities and constraints are unknown at this point, with significant recovery opportunities and with significant changes to development legislation under Bill 23. Further analysis is necessary to determine how these growth-related infrastructure upgrades will be funded, impact to growth, planning, and accommodation in other urban settlement hamlets and rural development in Kawartha Lakes is unknown. However, if more growth is directed to Lindsay, then it's fair to assume that growth in other areas will be minimal. To date, the province has not indicated its commitment to invest adequately in Kawartha Lakes to support this future growth explosion. For example, GO Transit, Metrolinx connections, and service have not been committed to. Construction and provincial highway expansion and twinning has not been accelerated. Healthcare system investments have not been committed to, commensurate with growth, and the ability to fund affordable housing has been curtailed. Until we can assess our growth commitments to date through our growth management study and understand the impact and cost to existing taxpayers and user rates to support this development, we should not be committing to any further unplanned growth at this time. So that's just the background, and it just makes total sense. So I hope everybody will support this. We had a unanimous motion on our first council meeting on Bill 23, and I'm hoping that this will also be unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Smeaton, did you want to weigh in?
Just briefly through you, Mr. Mayor, support, Councillor Warren did an excellent job there of articulating. I would just like to say that this particular development that's the seed of this memorandum was, from the campaign through to this memorandum, by far one of the most talked about things on my campaign trail. And from your memorandum, it's opened up further discussion all week. And there's no doubt that almost every single conversation I've had, people are very, very, very pleased with the strength of the mayor on this and your positioning. And, it says that we're not just saying no to a developer when they have scenario A. It's saying to all development, we have a growth management strategy that you will participate in if you would like to develop here. We guarantee that we have capacity for anybody who wishes to develop here. And contrary to a popular sentiment, I don't see this as putting a shingle out that says we're not open for business. I think quite to the contrary, it says to a certain style of developer who likes this sort of a model where they know exactly what T's to cross and I's to dot, you're welcome to develop here. We're announcing we are pro-development. We're moving. Here's the criteria all on face value. Here's exactly where the city of Kawartha Lakes is. Here's where we are with capacity. Here's where we are with hospitals. Here we are with everything. And more will come. I had a phone call this morning from a particular developer through an individual from a development that wanted me to know before this meeting how excited they were about this memorandum, and that in fact they had questions about possible philanthropy and different things that they could become involved with at the table through a growth management strategy. So I don't think there's the risk that perhaps someone might say there is. And at the end of the day, I just think the public need to be appreciated. They've had strong concerns about this particular development. And now here we have, and I'll just finish with this, we have an announcement through newspaper on a Friday with barely a heads up previous to the city itself that this will be in the back page of a newspaper. Not brought through council, not brought through City Hall, and it doesn't even name the developer on it either. So unless you know your codes and are watching the back page like we do, this was just simply put in on a Friday afternoon. And I would just like to say that I am very much in support of this memorandum for all the reasons that were articulated by Councillor Warren, and I hope that, I agree, I hope we have support at the table. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Through you to, I guess I have the Director, Holly, or CAO. We talk about the growth management study. We've been talking about this for years, and this is what all the growth is based on. I just wondering, do we have any, like, what is the status of this? And because a lot of developers, small, medium, and large, and citizens alike, they just want to know when their input is going to be heard, and like when is the timing of this, and then how does it come back to council? And do we decide everything on this growth management study? And just wanted to get an update on what the status of that is, please, because it seems like everything's hinged on that.
Director.
Through the mayor to the councillor. Yes, we are moving on our growth management strategy right now. We're looking at land needs through the study right now. We had a task force meeting last week, and what we're starting to look at is where to allocate the growth, and sort of how much excess lands that we have at the current state. That's always been one of the things that's been flagged for us, is that we have excess lands. So we're looking at different scenarios to see, do we develop potentially at a lower intensification rate, or do we develop at a higher intensification rate? So those are some of the things that we're looking at right now. We are right now getting sort of into the heart of the study, which is, where do we allocate, how much growth do we allocate, and at what intensity do we grow at?
Okay, thank you. And if we pass this motion, this developer and any other developer, they're seeing now that they're going to have to pay for probably the majority, if not 100% of the servicing costs. Is that true? That when a development comes through, a developer is going to have to basically pony up and not rely on the municipality or the taxpayer to pay for the services? Is that what we're asking them now?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's what the previous two developers committed to. So both Flato and Bromont, they committed to in council to pay for their share of the upgrades that are required to accommodate their development. We don't have any similar commitments in relation to this MZO to date. But we have put those types of commitments in to the framework agreements for the other in the other two instances.
Okay, and finally, I know in this project here, the original, which was passed 5-4, I believe, from the previous council, I voted against it, but anyways, we had different opinions at the time. Good on both sides. But does this stop the affordable housing segment of this project that was originally going to be built behind I.E. Weldon Secondary School? Does that stop that project going ahead, or basically what we're doing here is stopping the further expansion to the east of this particular development?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we have commitments from the FLATO group through our framework agreement for the previous areas, and that includes the affordable housing piece that they did commit to. FLATO is moving ahead with 2 small development applications, just under 30 acres. One is for 87 townhouses. The other is for an 80,000 square foot commercial block. Both those 2 pieces of property are within the urban area, so they can be serviced with using our existing services. But the remainder of the lands are outside of the urban boundary. So this proposal here that is before you today is a further expansion of that, would essentially amount to a further expansion of the urban area.
Okay, sorry, just one more. This is it. If this developer decides the next step, what is the next step? The developers, they just go directly to the minister for a decision? Or so what I'm saying is they're probably going to get it no matter what, but I mean, I support this, but I mean this motion here, but what's their next step? And I could see this happening, that they're just, it's designed now, whether it's Bill 23 or whatever mechanism they use, they can go directly to the minister to appeal this, or just basically circumvene the municipal elected officials.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and you are bang on that this is a confusing sort of process, and it has changed over iterations. FLATO did receive a support resolution a year or so ago for an original project. Any amendments to that base approval, no matter what size, scope, or scale, they do not require a follow-up endorsement from a local council. So it's being processed with notice as an amendment to that original application. Any new ones require a council support resolution, and the minister is requesting those in order to consider new minister zoning orders. So a little bit of a distinction there. So this one is coming in as an amendment, and it's actually been amended a couple of times previously, and this is the latest amendment that they proposed. So you are correct. In this particular case, they're working directly with the minister and ministry. The notice allows for a council or any interested parties to provide comments before their March date for comments. And so in essence, the resolution today, I understand, would be as feedback on that notice that was in the newspaper.
Deputy Mayor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you. And just one quick question further to what CEO was commenting on. So those further amendments don't come with the commitments from the previous council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we don't. The minister can't impose conditions, and unless the developer willingly agrees to extend what's already been agreed upon, there is no prescribed process or way to get those same conditions or requirements.
Thank you, and through you further. So I am sitting on the GMS, and we did have a very fulsome discussion last Friday. And one of the big concerns is, you know, how is the province going to adjust our numbers after we're done this? So it's a big we don't know. And the big thing about where we're going today with the mayor's memo is saying, you know what, these numbers are coming fast and hard. We've only been given so much between now and 2051. So we're just saying, let's, you know, take a step back and, you know, make sure that we have everything in place moving forward, because, you know, we're protecting the residents that are here now, and we're protecting the residents of the future. So we have to make sure that we build, you know, in a capacity that we can all move forward and, check all those boxes. So I think at this time, based on our GMS and where we're at, we made a lot of room. We made up a lot of timetable, I think, last Friday with the discussion that was happening. And, in moving forward, we need to have strategies in place. And I think that's where this GMS gives us that strategy. So for right now, I'm supporting what's at the table today. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Myself as well, Mayor. Thank you very much. I'm aligning with your resolution and your rationale as articulated by Councillor Warren and supported by Councillor Smeaton, and words of support from Deputy Mayor Richardson. My main concern is we have so many applications in the hopper right now that proceeding by MZO can favor big development companies here in the Lindsay area getting snapped up. So there's very well no real demand left for other wards, as Councillor Warren had mentioned as well. Having served as well as a resident on the Growth Management Strategy Task Force before being elected, I know the developing concerns around MZOs, trying to develop in the shadow of MZOs. They're not a planning tool. And decisions on boundaries and zoning need to be made here by the residents and council of Kawartha Lakes, not the minister out of Toronto. I've heard from some developers that are not very big on MZOs at all. They'd rather come to a community and follow the processes that the residents respect and expect. Last but not least, Mayor, I noticed in your resolution it talks about residential development for additional or new residential development. Pleased to see residential development in there. To me, that still permits possible use of an MZO where they were intended, which was in a public emergency or for much needed public services such as, say, a hospital, a clinic, or a nursing home. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I also would like to say that I support your recommendation going forward too. I think it's a good decision that I think the city and our councils have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess seeing as how it's my memo, I ought to say something about it. First and foremost, I want to thank staff for helping out with the wording and putting it together. I think that it's important for us to do this, and particularly important at this juncture. It's not that we're anti-development or anti-MZOs as they were intended to be used. What we are saying is we want responsible development. We want to move forward in a way that we develop so that all the infrastructure and all the necessary things are there to support that growth as it happens. We're not saying never, we're saying let us do this growth management study and let us see from the province some sign of goodwill that they have promised in the past. Things like the twinning of 35, things like GO Transit coming to Lindsay. What's going to happen with Ross Memorial Hospital in terms of how many people are coming in? They need to be assured that they are going to have the growth in order to manage those people. I think there are a number of issues on the table here. Our growth management study will probably be completed by the end of the year. There are other things like the transportation master plan and a couple of other master plans that would be nice to have in place as well. Once those are done, we'll be in a much better position to look at MZOs and look at other things. We're not saying never, and we're not telling developers to go away that we don't want them. We're telling them, yes, we want you, but we want you in a responsible way. We want to make sure that everything that we do is in favor of the residents who are here and the residents who are going to come, and that we're not going to put ourselves at risk. So I think that it behooves us to do this at this juncture, and I would thank you for your support. and trust that council will agree with the position we put forward. Councillor Joyce, you wish to say something?
I just wanted to add in growth management study, we got to keep primary care in the mix. I don't know if it's part of the committee's responsibilities or in their mandate, but I see that often gets forgotten. And we can't have a lot, and I'm for growth too, but have a lot of people move into our area and go, oh, well, how do I get a family doctor after they move here? We've got to pressure the province to help us with the tools, get more family doctors in this area along with growth. Just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you. Councillor Warren, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just for the public, I guess I'll actually read the recommendation. I didn't do that previously. That the memorandum from Mayor Elmsley regarding notice of a proposed amendment to a minister's zoning order, MZO Regulation 0.reg 721/21, Flato Developments, Inc., City of Kawartha Lakes, Lindsay, be received. That the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing be advised that the City of Kawartha Lakes does not support or endorse any further MZO requests or amendments for additional or new residential development outside of established urban settlement boundaries, and that council revisit this position following the conclusion of the city's growth management study and associated master servicing and transportation plans and provincial approval of revised growth allocations for Kawartha Lakes to 2051 is granted. And I'll just have a couple of words to finish. So as I said previously, you know, at our first council meeting, we were all unanimous about Bill 23. So I'm hoping this will be unanimous so we can send a message. And so we can have some balanced growth in other areas of our municipality, such as Fenelon, Omemee, Bobcaygeon, and Woodville too. So I hope you'll support this. Thank you.
Did you?
Yes, please, sir.
Councillor Warren.
In favor.
Councillor Perry.
In favor.
Councillor Yeo.
In favor.
Councillor Joyce.
I'm in favor.
Deputy Mayor Richardson.
In favor.
Councillor Ashmore.
In favor.
Councillor McDonald.
In favor.
Councillor Smeaton.
In favor.
Mayor Elmsley.
In favor. That's unanimous. Thank you all very much. Moving on to item 12, which is petitions. We have a petition request for sidewalk extension to the Norland Post Office by Mr. Ken Banderk. Councillor Yeo, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. Yes, I would. And through you, Mr. Mayor. Norland is, has a sidewalk that goes north to the town limit. As speaking of the province and their town limits, the sidewalk ends there. But the federal government has decided to put their post office on the other side of the bridge, which is outside town limits. So in between those two provincially regulated area and a federal post office, we have a municipality who can't put a sidewalk in because it's on a provincial highway. This is a real good one. So a couple years ago, when the province redid their bridge, they did agree to leave the culverts sticking way out on one side of the bridge, just in case we could ever put a sidewalk in. Whether we're allowed to or not on the highway, we don't know, but Mr. Rojas at the time did say that they agreed to do that much at least extend the culvert out for future construction. So I'd like to get this petition, and I'd like council to accept this petition, and I'd like them to forward it to staff, and for staff to come back, given all this federal and provincial ramifications, and tell us how we can get it done, or who to call to get it done. Thank you.
So your motion is to receive the petition and forward it to staff for a report back in, say...
A successful report.
Second quarter?
Yes, that'd be fine, thank you.
Okay. Second quarter, is there a seconder to that? Councillor Warren? Anybody else want to talk to it? Seeing none, all in favor? And that passes. On to bylaws, and I believe Councillor Yeo, you have the bylaws, and Councillor Smeaton has requested bylaw 1411 be extracted.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Perry, that the bylaws shown in section 14.1 of the agenda, namely items 14.1.2 and including 14.1.5 be read a first, second, third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? And that passes. Councillor Smeaton.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, and I should have said this before you read it. I had a conversation this morning that I don't need to speak to this anymore, so I apologize. I should have said that when you were reading it. I was reading ahead.
So hang on a second here. Okay, do you want to move the motion?
Move them.
That item 14, that bylaw 14.1.1
I can make a motion.
be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
And a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Richardson. All in favor? Oh. Sorry, go ahead. Councillor Yeo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I didn't extract it because the councillor had it extracted, and because I did have a question on it, because the bylaw to amend the encroachment bylaw deals with charging people money, and it says, and I don't really know, I wish we all get the answer that Councillor Smeaton got, because maybe it's the question I have, but it says that we're creating a system wherein there's a range of fees being paid each year, so they're gonna bump everything up. So what's that mean? Does that mean one person will see a $5 increase and somebody else might see a $105 increase? So it's a little vague, and I don't wanna wait for the final number to come through, so I wanna know what is the increase, because all it says is they're gonna round up basically to one fee. I think that's what I'm reading, so an answer to that would be great.
Thank you. Sherry, you want to weigh in?
Thank you. So through you to the councillor, what that refers to is council looks at CPI each year. So we're saying when they say to us, hey, we need to bump this up due to the increase in CPI by X percentage, then we're just saying we would like to increase the current leases or licenses, to mimic that, so that all of the licenses, all the tenants are being charged the same fee. So that a new tenant wouldn't come forward and say, oh, well, we've increased the CPI, and then they would get charged a higher fee than current tenants, just to keep them all the same, so that it's more transparent and fair.
Thank you, and I appreciate that answer. So I think I know what you're talking about. Now it raises a new problem in my mind, is why we're charging people this year and last year and probably the year before that CPI increases that are anywhere from 5.5% to 8.5%, 9%. And why we Well, I know why we're not capping them at 2%, because we tried that last term of council, and I don't even know if it was brought to the floor. The mayor at the time didn't think it was a good idea, because I don't recall a vote on it. So that does make that issue rear its ugly head again, as inflation is still around 6%, and I don't think we should be charging our constituents CPI index increases to have a set of stairs or park their car on a piece of public land, let alone every other charge in the city that's affected by CPI. So I'll agree, I'll move this bylaw, but I guess heads up, there'll be a memo coming shortly about the CPI index. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're
you.
moving it? All right. All in favor? And that passes. Moving on, item 15 is notice of motion. I don't see any. Item 16, closed session, and I believe Deputy Mayor Richardson has the adoption of the closed session agenda.
I do, and through you, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Smeaton, that the closed session agenda be adopted as circulated with the following amendments. Addition 6.4 being report CS 2023-001, public appointees to the Fenland Falls Power Links Committee.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, City Council will go into closed session to consider. Sorry. All in favor? Got ahead of myself. Joel made me do that. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in closed session? Seeing none. At this point in the meeting, City Council will go into closed session to consider the items under Section 16.3 of the agenda. All remaining staff, with the exception of the CAO, City Clerk, and City Solicitor, are now instructed to leave the electronic meeting at this time.
Are you breaking or going right into close?
You may as well go right in. There's not that much. As per our procedural bylaw requirements, I'm asking all remaining participants in our meeting today to confirm to me by raising their hands that they are in a private room where no other persons can overhear the deliberations and the internet connection is secure and not publicly accessible. You. Is Ms. Carlson on? Or
So,
no?
all just appointments.
Okay. So I need a mover and seconder for the following motion: that council convene into closed session at 2:52 p.m. pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act in order to consider matters identified in Section 16.3 of the regular council meeting agenda of Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, namely items 16.3.1, 2, and including 16.3.4. I have a mover, Councillor Ashmore, seconder, Councillor Yeo, all in favor, and that's passed. At this point, the meeting broadcast will now end for members of the public watching on Cogeco, your cable TV. The live stream of the meeting on YouTube will now be temporarily paused for members of the public. When closed session is complete, the live stream of the meeting will resume to address the remaining open session items on the agenda. Okay, we're out of closed session and we're back in open. Turn over to the clerk for matters from closed session.
Regarding item 16.3.2, being report corporate 2003-002, a motion is required that the terms of reference for the Accessibility Advisory Committee be amended to remove the requirement for an annual report to council by the end January, to reduce the minimum number of members to 3 and reduce the minimum number of meetings per calendar year to 4.
You need a mover and second? Mover and seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Richardson, Councillor Warren, all in favor, and that's passed.
A motion is also required that the following members of the public be appointed to the Kawartha Lakes Accessibility Advisory Committee for a term ending December 31, 2024. Caitlin Lowe's, Frederico Buonafe, Elizabeth Peters, Matthew Kukin. Motion?
Motion? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Yeo, all in favor? And that's passed.
Item 16.3.3 being report ED 2023-012. A motion is required that the appointment of the following members of the public to the Lindsay Downtown Business Improvement Association for a term ending December 31st, 2026 be endorsed. Reese Burns, Jim Garbutt, Sandra Patrick, Stephen Podolowski, Wesley Found, Sandra Faulkner, Nikki Didies, Jenny Connell, and Adam Hayward.
Motion, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Smeaton, all those in favor, and that's passed.
Item 16.3.4 being report CS 2023-012. That the following member of the public be appointed to the Fenelon Falls Power Links Committee for a term ending December 31st, 2026. Craig Bachman.
Moved by Councillor Perry, seconded by Councillor Warren. All those in favor? And that's passed. Moving on to confirming bylaw. Councillor Ashmore, you have that.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Smeaton, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a regular council meeting held Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's passed. A motion to adjourn. Councillor Perry, Councillor Yeo. All those in favor? And we're done. Thank you all very much.